Hello, and welcome back to The Dive, presented by Honda, of course. This is Season 5, Episode 18. Congratulations to Royal Never Give Up. And we're done with MSI. Wrapped up. There you go, guys.
Yeah. Yay! I have tons of energy. I had a fun time watching. I'm sure Kobe does. And Azael's on a hangover from casting the finals.
I'm tired, man. I woke up at midnight because I was excited about casting.
Yeah,
it took me a couple hours to fall back to sleep. And then my actual wake-up time was 3:30 or something. So then by the time I actually fell back to sleep, I got like an hour extra sleep. And yeah, I'm tired for sure.
It's always hard to sleep the night before because you're thinking of stuff too, because you're trying to do all your prep, and so then you're like thinking of different scenarios that can occur in game. I gotta remember this analysis and this and this, and then you got the actual early morning execution. But the results here speak for themselves. Our biggest news of MSI. Guess what? All right, LPL now has 4 seeds along with LCK. So Europe is not going to have their 4th seed, and damn, it's actually scary for Worlds, okay? Because LPL, they actually have just an entire league of teams ready to go for international competition. That everyone is going to be scary.
It's so terrifying, man. When you look at there's FPX, there's EDG, Top,
TES,
even JD. There's so many teams that even some of the teams, I'm not talking about maybe IG gets better or something. There could be 4 teams that are competitive with RNG, right? Where it's oh God, they actually barely won multiple series in playoffs. What if there are just 4 RNGs at Worlds and there's one in every group? We're doomed.
It'll be fine. Remember LGD last year? They lost games in the play-in stage. They were struggling. I'm not worried about it at all. And then LCK, the ones who actually got the new 4 seed, because last time it was Europe, Mad Lions was their 4 seed. LCK got crushed this split by Damwon. So they don't have anyone good in that league. Okay, I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
Yeah, I mean it's actually crazy too, because I wasn't as hyped for RNG as I was for FPX and for TES and stuff to represent here, and all of the prep going into this, I was like, oh hell yeah, we're gonna get DoinB back, and we're gonna have all these crazy stories, and then
top, let's go.
We got the
TN
team.
Redemption.
We got the team with 3 international rookies to the international stage. And a lane swapped top laner, and we're like, well, it's his first season lane swapping here. It's gonna be fine, right? No, this team wins all of MSI, beats the #1 team from every other region in the world, and that's that we didn't even get to see, Rookie and DoinB and all the superstars, right? So I think that is very scary. I will say that I actually I'm not scared at all for LCK 4 seed. I'm like, all right, it's cool stories to have, Faker there. All right, it's always great to have SKT, but you're like, is this and Genji? Yeah, as well. A lot of history with these orgs, but Hanwha Life, you're like, okay, Chovy's here. Chovy, that's great, but is the team really scary
Chovy
overall?
In the game.
You're like.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes LCK less frightening, I mean, those teams could all still do really well, right? But it's that Damwon was so clearly by far the best team in the league, right? And you're still like, well, hey, Cloud9 took a game off them. Hey, RNG beat them. Mad took them to 5. You could do it, right? And they kind of slammed their whole region. So then you're thinking, well, if everyone else is a pretty big step down, it's more manageable. But then when you look at the LPL, and of course, these one-to-one comparisons don't always really ring true. Yeah. Just because someone did well regionally doesn't mean that they're always going to do well internationally. We do have flops. We do have teams that just perform, better than others. Suning wasn't as good in the LPL. They looked really good at Worlds, right? You don't know what's going to happen. But I mean, most people weren't expecting RNG to win. It was incredibly close between RNG and a number of other teams. So you're looking at, and you're like, you're going to get 4 insanely good teams, 4 teams that could realistically all win Worlds and all play different. Yeah. I mean, RNG plays completely different than some of these other super lane dominant teams, right? Where even just watching the LPL finals, where you have Nuguri just absolutely top
Blasting
gapping Xiaohu every single game, but they still lost, right? It's really cool to see the different styles there. And I mean, the LPL is just nuts.
Yeah,
That'll be
I was gonna throw
fun.
in that the LCK last year as well. They it was a similar story where Damwon destroyed their own region domestically, but then at actual Worlds, they got first seed in 2 of their groups and second seed in their other group against Top Esports. So like, I think even if the 4th seed from LCK does come, I would still expect a decent showing out of them. I mean, I know this Damwon wasn't as dominant as that Damwon, which also smurfed their playoffs, but I don't know. I feel like they play such a stable game usually that it's a big skill check for a lot of international teams.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, and I know that all the international viewers are going to call us out on this. Every representative will be scary for us, okay? For NA, we're not saying this, but we're like, for tournament, winners.
Like LPL, anyone could, like, if they hit the right patch, they could win. Like the way Suning was like, oh my god, they're in the finals. Like no one probably really thought that, other than a couple of people going into that event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely going to be a scary world up there for LCS. But hopefully, we're scaling the experience that Cloud9 got. Going to do them good coming towards Worlds. I could see Cloud9 doing well at Worlds. I mean, we'll have to see. It's a long way.
We learned a lot. We learned a lot from this tournament. Okay.
Yeah. The brains are scaling. We're working on it.
Let's go ahead to the Honda MVP section though, because we've got our question right here. Who is your finals MVP? Broadcast awarded Gala, but also who was the contender for the title? For if Damwon won, or who was the ace for Damwon?
Oh well, the Damwon one's easy. I think we would all say Showmaker, right? Like, I think that wouldn't be close. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Someone says Canyon, but to me that one wasn't.
What if
close.
I said Khan in his Lee Sin game in the Aatrox game that they won? He was pretty good.
Yeah, but I think he was a lot worse in losses. Would be kind of like my counterpoint. But he was good. Yeah, and I mean maybe I'm not giving it enough thought, but like that's my snap judgment. I would say the MVP if I had a vote, I would have probably voted for Ming. I thought Ming was insane. Gala was incredible, and Gala had a great series, but it's a lot easier to see because you're picking up all the kills kind of thing. I thought Ming was so good. Just the difference between him and Beryl, I felt like was so stark. Throughout this entire series, like he absolutely gapped Beryl. I felt like pretty much every game, he was able to pressure Showmaker mid. The Leona game where he had multiple roams mid super early. His engages in team fights were really, really good. It felt like he was always catching multiple members with his knockups, with his solar flare. I just thought he was so good, and it was just such a stark difference between the 2 supports. I actually thought Ghost played better than maybe I was expecting, and I know people were still kind of roasting him, but he had some good fights. He had some good moments. Whereas Beryl was a disaster to me. I mean the Tom Kench game so I was so confused in what happened with that replay, and someone tweeted me after they looked it up. He didn't skill his W at level 4. He had 2 points in Q or something instead. So he literally didn't have Devour. It wasn't that it was on cooldown. He just never took it. So that's why they died to that gank. And that is just oh my God, that is horrible. You should not have died to that gank at all. And you literally didn't even skill the ability. It was just such a yikes. And every time on Tom Kench, I think, so I will give Beryl this. I think his mechanics are actually really good. So as much as he gets roasted, when you watch him play Nautilus, he's canceling Zenith's blades and stuff with it. He's buffering his hook to get out. It's just his positioning and his decision-making seemed really poor. And Tom Kench is the, how smart are you champion, right? There's no mechanics. It's just are you standing in the right place at the right time, right? Do you use your ability on the right person at the right time? That's literally all it is. And he looked so bad on it. He was never by his carries. This became the LVP instead of the MVP for some reason. But anyway,
I don't know.
Ming totally
about 5 minutes ago,
sorry.
I already knew my comment coming out of this was going to be we start on our question of who's the MVP.
I just went on
Azael's tired. He spent all day. He spent all day hyping teams up, hyping plays up. This is the other side of Azael.
Since you've opened the can of worms, though, I will also say maybe Tom Kench tests one other thing, which many professional players have failed, and that is do you use target champion only? I have seen a lot of freaking pros fail that test as well.
Save
Eating
the
up
range minion,
that's
bro.
right next to him. But Barrel, big brain, you can't eat the minion and look like a dummy if you don't even scale the ability. Then
Yes.
Azael, the casters are going to be like, well, it is a 20-second cooldown. He probably used it before that replay started. You know what? Let's give it to him. Because that's where I was. I was like, damn, they must have traded hard. It is a 20-second cooldown. Okay, they timed that gank really well.
I was so confused, man.
I'm going to go back on the positive train, all right? Mr. Negative Nancy's over here.
Sorry, my bad.
I'm just following the lead.
I felt like both AD carries popped off in like a scoreline sense and like obviously played cleanup and team fights really well, but I think a lot of like the biggest plays were coming from other members on the team usually. Like in that game 5, like Ming influencing mid lane and like getting out and doing all this kind of stuff right away and getting people fed. Even like there's the Renekton game where Chovy was like 0, 2, and 3 or something, but like was actually pretty impactful in helping control that topside jungle, which is like how they snowballed so hard through a lot of that game. Like I thought overall, sorry, I 80 carries playing cleanup. Get out of here. I'm giving it to probably Ming or Showmaker or something instead.
Yeah,
Showmaker
nice
lost,
positive,
bro.
Nice positive take there, Mark. I guess to throw one out for another one for the option for the side of Damwon. My argument for Canyon would be the Nidalee game, because that whole whole game collapses if your Nidalee is not insane. That whole the whole entire game plan is out the window. And you could see so many times. I really enjoyed that early game because, for one, this was Damwon going with a different look here. And they're drafting, double winning lanes and a Nidalee to work off for Canyon. I was like, hell yeah, let's turbocharge this. Let's see it, And they're putting pressure on RNG, and Canyon keeps invading Wei. And even the bottom lane does a good job of, when they see Wei, they don't back off too early, so they waste some of his time, and they communicate and allow Canyon to go for counter jungling during that time. And then he's attacking him, and you see Wei like walking back and forth, like he's feeling the pressure, he's feeling the teammates about to type jungle diff, as Canyon's accomplishing so much across the map, and he's not getting stuff done. So that would have been my argument for him. We can get into more of that later, because I have another a lot of people
played really well, for sure.
Once we get to the finals, but we can first start with
Apple podcast reviews.
Actually, let's hear some good news, because Mark wanted some positive vibes, but then he couldn't bring them himself.
I had a slam 80 carries instead. I'm sorry. I got lost.
Shahu also played really well. Honestly, you could look at a lot of different people. I think a lot of members on RNG, when you're talking from the positive side, had big step up games, right? Cryan Lucian was insane. I think Wei did a really good job against Canyon, who's just like unanimously the best jungler in the world. Shahu's Gragas engages were really, really good. Gala had some incredible moments. The dive in, basically solo kill in the midst of his team. I think it was game 4, was like just one of those moments I'll remember for a long time. Ming was a monster, so a lot of positive. We'll get into it though. Apple Podcast reviews. Let's check the update on the meta here. Is Mark still on top? First one comes from Owen the Bell. Only one thing could make it better. 5 out of 6 stars. Wow, it's only out of 5, but his is out of 6. Only thing that could make it better and push it up to 6 is if the theme music was MarkZ singing Silver Scrapes. Actually agreed. We're going to have the producers look into that for some.
You actually agree? You're memeing right now. There's no way you actually
agree.
I'm looking into your soul right now, Azael.
It's
just he's getting shifty. He's feeling uncomfortable in his seat now. He feels the pressure already.
No, I'm feeling good. I'm a fan of it. Plus, Mark hates it, which just makes me love it so much more. Because Mark is always like, this is the only thing anyone remembers. And I'm like, yes, I love it. So we'll get that in there. No problem. Next review comes from Floomster Goonster. The Dive is my favorite league podcast. Hey, guys, love The Dive. Been listening to every episode for a couple years now. You're the best. Your analysis top notch. I appreciate the effort y'all put in every week. One thing I would like to see of is more in-depth analysis on specific game-changing situations and matches. That's interesting. Something we could definitely think about. Other than that, Kobe, I've loved watching your growth over the years, hearing you take care of yourself mentally, physically, meditation, working out. Wow, Kobe's a hell of a man. You heard it right there. It's you're one of my favorite casters. And I swear to God, if you leave us like Chad did, I will never forgive you. Cap for Kobe, 5 stars. I seconded on that last part. Definitely won't forgive you if you.
I second the first part. You know, I love seeing your transformation physically, mentally. You know,
emotionally.
I love checking in on Kobe's Instagram.
That's why
His
Mark actually moved closer to me and Travis. He's a block away now, so that we can go on walks around the neighborhood and check in on
If
him.
I stand on my roof, I can see your apartment.
He comes to check in on you physically. Just give the bicep
Yeah,
a little squeeze, see how you're doing on that week.
That's what the telescope is for, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
We got one more here. This one's from Moxie Phoenix. Love the dive. Thank you so much for making great content. Kobe and Azael are amazing, even if MarkZ is a stiff old curmudgeon. The weekly overview with the in-depth analysis and the witty banter make the dive an amazing show. They want to hear some more draft breakdowns and analysis if possible. Sweet. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for the Apple Podcast reviews. Keep leaving those.
Thanks for liking my tweets, Azael. You are the real world champ.
Oh, there you go.
You got a shout out there.
True. Thank you. All right. So thank you, everyone, for the reviews. If you leave us some funny ones, maybe you'll hear it on the show. All right. Let's do a little bit of a recap. We can go over some of the semis pretty quickly here. First one, obviously, RNG versus PSG. What are your thoughts?
All of my thoughts are Doggo related, and how can we get Doggo over to the LCS and incorporate this young new talent, because that's to me what this series was kind of it was lifting up PSG. Well, there was that, plus there was also it kind of reigniting the Maple fire. That was cool to see.
Yeah.
Because let me set the record straight here. I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the previous episode, but Maple in the LPL was Maple was not doing well. Okay, that's why he had to transfer back, and he had even originally when he left the LPL, I'm not exactly sure about the terms, but he had tweeted out that he was looking to join a team possibly in the LCS. So he was looking for offers and stuff, but he had been doing so poorly in the LPL. They couldn't find a spot, and then to have this resurgence with PSG. That was also a heartwarming story, I feel like, from it, because like his Akali, everything was clean.
I feel like the PCS LMS has always been, at least in recent years, like sort of felt like it was slipping a little bit with some of the international performances, especially around Worlds. They've always been really good at MSI. I think they've gotten out 5 out of the 7 times or something to NA's 2 out of the 7. So obviously they're really good at MSI, and I felt like this was a big return to form, I think, for a lot of people to feel really excited about them and to see Doggo, because so many of the names, to your point, Kobe, were names that we had heard for a long time and had started going over to the LPL with Maple, with Karsa, and some of the other big names from Flash Wolves, for example. So I don't know, it was really cool to see Doggo as this new young blood. Kai Wing was popping off later on in the tournament. And then Maple himself obviously still has it. His Silas games were a couple of them were pretty nuts. So it was cool to see PSG. And I'm really excited to see, because I think they have 2 or 3 Cs I think it's 2 for Worlds. So hopefully Doggo, because he's not actually on PSG Talent. If we want to see him at Worlds, we kind of need to hope that his team comes in second.
It's beyond.
I'm hoping that's the case.
I think it's beyond gaming, and they were in the finals, and I think they were pretty clearly the second best team, if I'm recalling correctly. They were I don't know, 16-2 or something in regular season. They had a very good record as well. But clearly PSG was the number 1 team. The interesting thing for me is it's Doggo was so impressive at this event, and everyone kind of comes away with this love for Doggo, and he's their favorite player and everything. But he's the sub, right? He's not on their team, and it's interesting because I obviously didn't watch all of the PCS. I watched the finals, and I watched a handful of other games and everything. Watching some of their season games. I watched these guys, the 2 teams, match up against each other, because that was number 1 and 2. It was the only team that actually beat them, I believe, in the regular season was Beyond Gaming. And I felt like Doggo was better mechanically than Unified, but obviously Unified always wins, right? Like his team is the better team, and it'll be interesting to see how he performs with the squad coming Worlds, assuming that he's healthy and they don't have to do any weird sub situations. Because I know that the fans of the PCS on Twitter were pretty vocal when I said, I think Doggo might be better than Unified. Like, this might be an upgrade. People were pretty vocal that, like, hey, calm down, like, Unified's the best. So it'll be interesting because I do think it puts a lot of additional pressure on you as a player. It's like that sub situation, right? Like when someone comes in and does a really good job, you feel like you have to do better than that, or you've kind of failed, right? Like, or you're gonna, lose face in the eyes of your team and in the eyes of the fans. So I think there's going to be a ton of pressure on Unified to really show up at Worlds as a result.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Mark. You're going to say the same thing, I'm pretty sure.
What, the Turtle Chaos thing?
Nope, that's definitely not the same thing.
I was going way back in the day when Turtle came in and got a pentakill, and then it was like, bye, Chaos. It's Doggo comes to this international competition, pops off. If you start struggling, like, that's I think going to be in the back of your mind. So I was going to say that. Now, where were you going to go?
No, I mean, I was just going to reference this last Worlds when they had both subs, and then they ended up replacing their mid laner and brought in Maple. So. It's real.
All right, well, who knows what will happen there. RNG obviously played a pretty good series, though. We'll talk more about them in the finals. The other semifinal was the Damwon Mad 3-2. This was a weird series to watch for me, like really weird, because, Damwon absolutely stomped them in 3 games, right? It was a 25-minute win, a 22-minute win, a 23-minute win. And if you're just looking at those, you're like, oh my God, that's so one-sided. But then the other games, Damwon was very out of sorts, and Mad played, really well. Mad capitalized on all their mistakes. They were able to punish them when they're out of position. There was like absolute bot gap in both of those games. It felt like, Carzy absolutely going nuts, kind of crushing Ghost, which I think shook a lot of people's confidence about Damwon going into the finals, and then that kind of ended up being a little bit true, maybe more on the Beryl side than the Ghost. But this was an interesting series just because it was like a lot of one-sided games, but it was a 3-2, Mad kind of took over and played really well in the games that they won. Damwon crushed them in the games that they won. And it was kind of like one of the first times I really remember looking at a series and being like, wow, like an LCK #1 team just looked really inconsistent, which isn't something that I normally associate with the LCK teams. You normally think of like the top LCK seed as being like super buttoned up, super consistent, really, really strong play. And they're going to give you the same time, like same kind of level of play every game. And you got to be like perfect to beat them as a result. But this was like such a different look,
Two main things for me for this series. One, starting with the positive, the Sugar Bowl. I was really happy for Carzy and Kaiser, because even in beginning prep and stuff, when talking to LEC analysts and stuff, they're all like, yeah, the bottom lane definitely is inconsistent, so not quite sure. And there have been good performances and some risky bad performances, but man, they did so well, and especially those two from previous Worlds. Having some redemption arc there for them to go super aggressive and have these really big performances. I was really happy for them. I feel like Kaiser especially deserves so much credit as far as what he's able to bring for the team, because this team got so much credit as well for their team fighting, and he's at the very center of it, in addition to their aggressive lane phase that now you're seeing their Tristana combos with whichever engaged melee support he's on. They're able to go for these aggressive 2v2 kills. On the other side, and the other angle to look at that from the Damwon side, where I was like, this team is not getting what they want out of Ghost and Beryl, as far as previously people gave them leeway because Nuguri was so good. And this series encapsulated why and how much the pain from losing Nuguri actually hurt this team. Because previously, if you did focus on bottom side, you'd have so much pressure top triangle because you have Showmaker and Nuguri solo lanes with Canyon all over you, taking away your jungle, taking away your objectives, pressuring for these laners, and you have two crazy solo laners. But Khan had some inklings, like the Lee Sin game. Everyone's going to use that as the example because that's a super recent one. But there's nobody arguing that Khan is holding a torch to the same carry style that Nuguri would bring to this team. So to me, that's where it kind of put that front and center for me for this Damwon squad. And I always feel like whenever teams kind of give that extra like cushion to their weakest area as like, oh, well, it's okay because they're our weak side of the map. I'm just like, well, if you're defending world champions and your peak, you're always looking for perfection, right? And if you're going to have the perfect team, you're not going to have, oh, they just need to bring, what they bring for team fights, or they just need to do, X few things later. You want the very best out of them. Like, you can definitely play weak side better than that. And yet they won worlds with with Nuguri on the squad. So I feel like that was one thing for me for Damwon for this year for Worlds is definitely going to be a reoccurring story. I don't know if I even saw people postulating about possible, roster changes or what would even happen. I feel like that's really difficult to do.
It'll be interesting if they both make it, then they match up, right? Nuguri versus his old team.
Yeah, but I feel like between spring and summer roster changes, it's insanely hard to have good ones. So I wouldn't actually recommend that at all. But I don't know how you guys feel about that whole scenario, because that is going to be so much of this story. Obviously, everybody's just memeing super hard on the bottom lane because they're making a lot of mistakes. But they also then, in finals also showed they can have, bring those values that people attributed to them when they did have Nuguri on the team still.
I think for me, at least, I'm way less concerned about Khan than Beryl. I think Ghost is pretty good. I actually think Ghost is relatively consistent. Like, of course, every player in League of Legends and has this variance naturally, but I don't think he's like crazy bad or crazy good. I think he's just generally really good. But it's unfortunate that his performance is so heavily tied to what was easily the most volatile, underperforming player of a lot of teams, honestly. You could say of a lot of the major regions, even. Like, he really struggled to, because we know Beryl can be really good, but he was underperformed most of the tournament. Even in the series against Mad Lions, like, after they took away the Tahm Kench from game one, I was like, oh, that's his like a crutch pick a lot of the time for players. Is Tahm Kench is like, how you can't feed on that champion no matter what with the gray health and all that stuff. Whereas his Nautilus was getting really exposed kind of all tournament long, and so talking about some of these potential roster swaps, like I don't know who's there, if there's a support that they can snap up out of something else, but I think that would actually be more than Khan, because Khan's not Nuguri, and that sucks, but like, he took over some games on his Aatrox, he took over some games, I think in this series even on his Jace, maybe his Lee Sin as well. Like, he showed that he can play that playstyle. He's not gonna like 1v9, and I actually don't think that, we've talked about before, the top pool this tournament wasn't crazy aggressive or anything. So maybe he'll struggle more at Worlds, but overall, I think those are other concerns.
Yeah,
I see you have your hand up, so I'll let you get in before I get back to Mad Lions.
Well, I was just going to say, the whole point of the story was not about, oh, we need to get, we need to replace Khan or get Nuguri back. The point is that without Nuguri and the huge advantage that you would have on the top side, it exposed that the faults of the bottom lane, basically. And the lack of the value that was there as a placeholder before, because their top triangle was so lopsided. So it was supposed to be all focused on bottom lane.
I guess I would still say that, like, I think Beryl, maybe it's just, oh, your top side is not as dominant, but I don't think, like, Beryl can still turbo win while that's going on, but he didn't do that during Worlds last year. So, like, that's why I don't look at Nuguri as, like, the savior for why Beryl, like, is suddenly like, oh, there's more pressure on him. I think he just had a bad tournament and a bad showing. So, like, of course, I would take the top half of the map from 2020 over this version, but I also would take 2020 Beryl over this version as well.
Yeah, and even LCK regular season Beryl, like,
Because I think a good point, like with kind of like what you're saying, Mark, is that it's like he was vulnerable to jungle pressure, but he was also dying in 2v2s constantly, right? And this wasn't just in the finals. This was against Matt as well. This was something that happened,
C9.
some as well earlier. Yeah, exactly, C9. So it's like he was just dying, to the pressure of the 2v2 a lot. So he was definitely having some big errors. I mean, I hope for his sake that he can bounce back, because I do think mechanically he can be really good. It's just, yeah, I mean, he had a lot of bad mental errors.
I'm not saying Barrel's name again the rest of this podcast. I feel like I've said his name too many times. He's been getting a lot of flame. I'm done talking bad about Barrel. There's other things to talk about, like Mad Lions getting criminally underrated all tournament wrong. What'd you say?
I said you already lied. You just said it.
I meant once I'm out of this segment. Damn it. Mad Lions have been criminally underrated all tournament long.
Have they, though?
I think so.
Who criminally underrated them below?
Some people thought C9 would be better. Some people thought PSG would be way better. Some people thought that they wouldn't get out of the group. I mean, they took Damwon to 5 games. That's pretty good. I think obviously as a competitor you want to win. You're not going to be like, hey guys, that felt great. But I think for fans of EU even and Mad Lions, you can be pretty happy with this, because they had a pretty competitive playoffs. When you talk about RNG and their road and all the teams that tested them, Mad Lions had a relatively tough road. I don't think that this is the peak of this team or that region. So in a lot of ways, I would say that you should feel pretty good as an EU fan with this showing at this tournament. And I think a lot of people, like I've referenced before in the Reddit comments and the pre-tournament expectations, EU was like, hey man, we just don't want G2 and 8 again, and this was far from that.
Okay, so maybe my read was off, but my read was that this is the placement that people had this team at, and the people that were upset that G2's not there were, yes, they had a lower bar for this team, but it was compared to winning MSI, and they're like, oh no, we totally wish. That's why they were kind of down on Mad Lions, because they were accepting that, oh yeah, we're definitely not going to win this time. We're definitely not going to be first place. We're going to be, oh no, under RNG and Damwon, which is where they ended. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if the criminally underrated part. I feel like it was at least close to this placement.
I mean, I think people said they'd be happy if this happened, but they weren't. A lot of people weren't expecting it. I think you can just even look at a lot of people's power rankings of the teams and see that this is, I think, better than what they would have said. And overall, I think they have a lot of things to be happy about. I think Armit and El Yoya looked really good. Humanoid as well. Landing phase was great. Had a couple issues that he still needs to work out, potentially the late game situations. But I'm very positive on Mad Lions. I actually think that they looked really good. They have a level of aggressiveness that is hard for a lot of teams to match.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were an exciting team to watch. To me, the biggest expectation versus reality difference was the bot lane. I think their bot lane did well. All the LEC analysts, were fairly negative on them as far as consistency, right? They got gapped pretty hard in the LEC Finals, all games. So for them to come here and have as good of a performance as they did, I think was a really big deal. And I mean, as far as were they underrated, were they not? I think it just depends on whose ratings you're going off of. Because I know a lot of the LEC fans were really negative, to your point, right? We had talked about that in the past. But I also think from at least the power rankings that I saw, I think we had them third, fourth, right around there, right? Yeah. And I think most people kind of had them favored probably over NA and over PCS based on historical rankings. But I will say, based on the expectations coming into the series, they got way closer than I thought, right? I was thinking 3-0, maybe a 3-1, right? And I was feeling more confident in a 3-0 than a 3-1. And I know Kobe gave him some more points. Kobe, EU fan number 1 over there. So,
and I also gave the reasoning of blue side, which turned out in the finals won every single game,
which Mad wasn't in, but
so we're just gonna take a piece from over here and a piece from over here. You put them together, Azael. That's a trophy.
Okay, that's what I do with my analysis. I see this bot lane's gonna perform well, and then this other bot lane performs well. And I said, well, some bot lane was gonna perform well.
Exactly. So
I kind of called it.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, I think from that point of view, they did really, really well. And regardless of what your expectation was coming in, going 2-3 against Damwon, I think is a great result, right? Damwon has been really, really strong. And, some of the Mad guys obviously still are less experienced internationally, obviously, than some people go home. which is making me want to go on a tangent here. Before we get into the finals, I don't know if you guys have anything more to say. Are we good with this?
Get us out of here. Take us down the Candyland road.
Here's my tangent, and this is something that's been like tilting me. There's always this discussion about, okay, they don't have a lot of international experience, like that's why they didn't do well this year, right? And so that has been given as kind of a reason for a lot of people. And now there seems to be this like turnaround of people are like, well, look at Gala. He did great in his first. Look at Ben. Well, that proves it that, international experience doesn't even matter. You look at these examples, and it just like mind blows. Like it's just I get so tilted when I read these takes. I'm like, do you not understand that each player is different, right? That it's literally when you're talking about experience and nerves, that is a purely mental thing, which is just completely different for every single player. There are some players who will go to their first tournament and never be affected by nerfs, and they'll be playing as well as they ever will from day one. There are some players that will need 10 games, 20 games, 50 games until they're comfortable, and then they'll play well. And then there are another group of players who will literally never play well because they will never overcome their nerves, right? And that is the thing that people need to understand. It is not a bullshit excuse to say that someone is playing nervous or would benefit from more experience, right? Like people say it's a cop-out to say like, oh, like Blabber played the exact same as he played in LCS. He just played better people, so that's why he looked bad. It's like, well, no, right? Like, maybe Blabber actually does need extra games to look good. Maybe Carzzy needed the experience last year to actually perform really well this year, right? Every player is different. And just because some players are successful their first go round does not mean that experience doesn't matter, right? And sorry, I just had to go on that tangent because that's something that's been absolutely tilting me
like this topic.
About these hot takes. I'm just like, oh, it's like saying, well, Kobe isn't afraid of spiders, so no one should be afraid of spiders. Pretty clear.
Yeah, you little babies. I also, as far as spiders, definitely scared of spiders. At least the giant.
There you have it. Everyone should be afraid of spiders. Kobe's afraid of spiders. Why aren't you?
I did want to touch on this a little bit. Then, as long as we're going down this road, because I also would separate the experience thing and the nerve thing, because it does have overlap. As far as first you're experiencing it is going to have multiple positive effects on you as a player. I don't think that unless you have like some super embarrassing first international event or something, that like experience would be detrimental to you. Because you are going to get your taste of playing on the stage with a lot of pressure, but you're also getting introduced into the dome that is an international competition, and the changes in meta and the scrim culture and the different structure that you have to like live your life by for these international events, and you're traveling and all this stuff. So some of the things that can be improved are, for some people, if they have nerves, or being able to work through those. But also there are just, positive benefits that the players, when they come back, are always talking about. Oh, it was so different from my expectation in this way. So next year, just the fact that they have been there and done that, even if they're still just as nervous next time up on stage, they at least know some things to expect when they're going in. So I think that, I also agree, the people that are like, look at this, Gala, all these, and even people have done this every year, right? Whenever they've had successful rookies, a lot of times from LPL,
et cetera.
They're always like, look at this shining young child here who has just won the world championship. No excuses from him. So why do you have any excuses? I agree that is kind of ridiculous, because I feel like there's very few ways in which experience would actually hurt you, and there are so many different little benefits that you can have from gaining it. So yes, it's not a cure-all solution or anything, but you can't argue that it's not, it won't have a positive benefit in at least some way.
Yeah, I don't think anyone, I hope no one's arguing that. I think where I can see the argument come from a little bit, because obviously every player is different, every person's different personal psychologies, whatever. You're going to have different career arcs as well. Some people bust onto the scene and then die off quickly, and struggle to hit that same high again, like a Mike Young. Some people play for a long time and just steadily keep improving. And you have a different career. Like Solo had been in the scene forever and struggled to stay on a roster, and then like next thing you know, he's in multiple finals with FlyQuest. Or Smeb as a Korean like example. There's a lot of players who have different career arcs. They have different performances at Worlds and international events, and like you're saying, nerves as well is a different thing. But I will say I understand some of the points that people make where it's like it's sometimes offered. It feels like as a like excuse for what happened. It's like, oh well, these guys are young, they'll come back, it'll be better next time. And it's like, no, they had some really fundamental problems that they struggled with, or they did this and this wrong. And I think that's where some of the pushback comes from, because like you said, it's like a pendulum, like a lot of things on the internet. It's like for a long time, like teams would bust her out and you'd be like, well, they'll come back next year, and I think especially for a lot of fans who's just like, nah, they're going the other way right now.
It also happens a lot when these are not fluid conversations, and it is just one party speaking out into social media or into the void, and then they use the most extreme example, 100% the other way as the argument that they're going against. And it might not be an actual straw man, because it is like there are some people or one person or something that has this fully extreme version of the argument, but it's still, everybody then uses the most extreme version of the other side's argument in order to then prop up their own. Yeah.
I mean, like Canyon and Nuggery, for example. They went to Worlds 3 times before they won, or was it 2? I can't remember. But they like Nuggery was super hyped up and then kind of struggled in group stage and was getting beaten down a little bit more. Was it one time before?
It was only one time. Unless you're counting the year before when they weren't even a qualified LCK team,
people were hyping them up.
They were dumping on people in scrims that were over at Worlds.
Maybe you're thinking of Smeb.
No, I'm thinking of
they went one time. They got beat by G2, and that's where the rivalry emerged from. And then they won. Like it was a crazy story. They literally weren't even qualified for LCK. Boom, went to Worlds the next year. All right, we lost. Then
2 years later,
won it the next year. So.
Well, that's exactly my point. Is like obviously people can grow with experience. Like obviously Damwon is a core group of guys between Showmaker, Canyon, and Nuggery who went from like their first year at Worlds, obviously not at their peak, stick around for another year. They changed Nuclear out for Ghost, I think it was. But either way, I think their whole top side of the map improved as well. And so, even people who explode onto the scene can keep going up.
Yep, absolutely. All right, for the finals, what did you guys think? Obviously, 5-game series. I thought it was super exciting. Got some really, really cool picks in there. Pretty back and forth overall. Mark, what was your biggest kind of like takeaway from the final?
Xerath is OP. That's my biggest takeaway.
100% win rate. Can't beat it.
Yeah, can't deny it. Blue side's OP. No, I think the biggest takeaway for me was this might be more specific, but the change in Damwon's philosophy over the course of the series and over the course of their entire spring into MSI, where they basically abandoned scaling. They realized that RNG is probably just too good in the mid and late game to seriously contest over and over again. And you see their draft 1 have Sion in it. In game 5 and even game 4, when you look at their solo lanes in there, it's like you have Jace, Renekton, Aatrox lanes, you have Varus in the bot lane. They're like all in on early game because they realize like, damn, this RNG is just way too good at macro and dragon setups, and like we don't want to 5v5 them. We want to play a more volatile game. And it's uncommon that you see the LPL team impose this play style on the LCK team. And it's a bit of a, I mean, this is what people have been saying about RNG for a long time, that they're not the typical LPL team, yada yada yada. But I think it was just really cool to see that kind of force onto, Damwon to be like, hey, you have to play our game or change your game up because we'll keep beating you in the late game. I thought that was really interesting how aggressive Damwon's game 4 and game 5 drafts became.
Yeah, my favorite game for their side was game number 4. I kind of alluded to the Nidalee draft early on in the show, but them drafting winning lanes, for solo lanes, and Nidalee for Canyon, and unleashing this pressure from the very opening of the game, and then also being able to cover a lot of plays towards bottom half of the map. Just this is exactly what I wanted to see from Damwon, because I felt like Damwon at this tournament have taken a lot of punches and then been reaching and scrambling a bit, because you notice they have very rapid shifts in their drafting throughout this entire tournament. And it really did feel like they were reaching, because they could feel it kind of slipping away, from them as the tournament was going on, and they were receiving some of these losses. And so I really did like, that they go with the Nidalee Renekton for Showmaker Canyon, having Khan the Aatrox on top side to work off of too, and so many of these plays, like they're coordinating them. Even though there's the one jungle invade where they overreach, they don't immediately turtle shell after that, right? Because from watching, so many LCK games, you're just like, oh no, is it going to be turtle shell now? Are we going to have a, super slow, long stall out? But not the case at all. And I really, that's why I was happy to again see, Canyon just performing so exceptionally well. Because, and one little gripe to be, I guess, take the wet blanket approach on the pentakill. I mean, it was cool, especially because Damwon bottom lane's been getting flamed so much, for Ghost to get a pentakill. But it was a AD carry, behind front line, hit your closest target until the very last 2 kills, and then you're like, woo, I get to rocket jump forward for the for the last 2 kills.
That's most of them, to be fair.
Yeah, I get those. And so I was there with everybody. I was like, let's go, Ghost. Okay, pentakill in the finals. Hell yeah, man. But in my mind, I was like, you see Canyon, he baited in Leona's E, Zonya's. And so then Leona's stuck in there. Leona has the explosive shot on his head, and Ming's like, I've been baited. I've been outsmarted. What do? He walks back into the rest of his team, explodes. And then you have Showmaker's Renekton living with slivers of HP and stuff. And I'm like, that's some good frontline work. That's me. I know I'm one of the frontliners. These 80 carries in the back, walking forward, getting
taking
the
all the glory.
Yeah, good job.
Gala doesn't need that. Gala's dive under that inner turret was a way more impressive play than the penta. That was like, oh my god, he sees it and he wants Ghost dead.
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoy the pentas. They're obviously really hype when you kind of see the play unfolding. And I felt like I realized pretty early in that play, he had 2 kills, and I was like, he's gonna get a pentakill, isn't he? Because you can kind of see it coming out, especially when you're playing Tristana, right? Because you can always close the gap once the kills start rolling in to clean up the rest. So I mean, that was pretty exciting either way. For me, there was a few things that really kind of stood out. One, I'll touch on first, and then I'll kind of jump into the other. I actually loved the level 1s from RNG. Game 1, they do the invade, they're taking away the other side. That was really cool. I felt like they created a lot of good advantages with that. The fake leash one, so I haven't actually had time to go back and look at the VOD, but my understanding is that with the fake leash, obviously they assume that Udyr is starting bot side, right? They assume he's starting leash blue. He's clearing up towards Raptors. He got warded at Raptors, but I don't think the ward ever actually saw his character. So everyone's like, yeah, but they just counted the CS and they know he's only has 3 camps. But if you don't see the character, you don't get to see how much CS he has. You just know that he's on Raptors, right? So my understanding of the situation, and again, I haven't had time to go back and fully double check all this, but this is kind of what I had talked to some people about, is that basically Damwon inferred that RNG started bot side with a leash. He got a heavy leash from Kai'Sa, so he did a really fast clear up to top, and he's on his 4th camp when they see him on the Raptors, clearing to top side. And then a lot of people were also like, well, he was kiting back into the bush. But that's also something that literally every jungler does when you get warded on or there's a threat of an invade, right? You pull the Raptors back into the brush to reduce the chance of it being smited away or stolen by a spell or anything like that. So, regardless of exactly how baited Damwon was, the minion wave was in such a bad spot then for their bottom lane to be able to actually reset it. So, Wei comes directly down, whether they were fully baited and thought it was his 4th camp, or they just assumed this is his 3rd camp, but he's going to the Wolves next. It was still so smart, right? The preparation was just brilliant. And I think to see the payout in an international final for something like that is so cool. To tank a couple hits on the blue buff, Gala spends mana on the blue buff to really sell that you actually did this leash. You're spending mana, you're spending health, you're starting topside leashless, and then make the path work, get the double kill. Like when I saw player cams, I inferred that they were like bamboozled of how is the Udyr here, right? And it was one of those things where I was like, damn, you sold it. Like they bought that hook, line, and sinker. You got the payoff. And I want to believe in my heart of hearts that that's what's happened. And I thought it was really, really cool.
Yeah. I believe. I mean, it's also with the Jace top, you would expect Udyr to want to clear up there anyways. And so, like you're saying, I mean, I just went back and rewatched it. I don't think they saw the camp being done, but they didn't
but
see...
not the CS because they didn't get Udyr.
CS.
And you don't
So
see that he has
thought...
blue buff or red buff, so you don't know which way.
So you probably assume he's wrapping up the long way to get to his red or something. So
it's hard to know, but that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, even if you are in the camp of like they saw the CS. For me, my big credit to it was him abusing the minion wave, because that is the biggest talking point for junglers in trying to get and what all new junglers are always asking, like, okay, how do I gank better? And I'm like, you actually, while you're doing your camps, just scan through your each lane, like look at each lane. I hotkey my camera on each player to different keys just at the bottom, so they're easier to hit. So like just while you're doing the camp, you can just do ZXC to hit all 3 lanes, and keeping track of the minion waves, because that is the biggest thing about ganking is, as a laner, everybody who plays League of Legends, that feeling of like, oh, Mark, it's lane, and you're talking about the bottom lane. It was in the perfect spot for them. And if you're the opponents there, you're like, but like, really, do we have a choice right now? Do we just have to give up so much to work around Udyr, being here or whatever? So many times I've been playing with different like pros or ex-pros, and even though they're for sure going to carry the game, there's different points where they'll be like, he might be here, but I'm going to int for this tower, or he might be here, but I'm in for this wave, and they just do. They're like, he might be here, but it's worth it for me to just do this. And so, ganking people on timings like that, for me, was a big credit. Because I was like, I think maybe they saw or whatever, but it's. I think he does. I think he still deserves so much credit for that. It was really well.
It was brilliant either way.
Yeah, it's well orchestrated.
I was gonna say, even if they saw it to that timing point, like he still has his whole bot side to clear. Even if you're like, oh, he cleared top side. I mean, he still came down prior, and they probably were like, well, maybe we can get the wave in and get it to bounce before he actually finishes this clear. But he killed them and then went back to his clear. So either way,
really
it's
cool.
smart.
And
really,
I do
really
think
cool.
I do think the fake leash is generally very good.
Yeah, especially when you're playing against junglers who are so good at tracking and inferring where you're going to be, right? These teams play almost perfectly around where you're going to be. Like we saw that throughout the series, where we had some of those games where like Showmaker or Cryan were moving from lane constantly, like the Cryan Rise game, I believe it was. He's constantly moving. Every single time he moves, they have him warded out, they have him tracked, and, Damwon just backs up, and you can never get anything to happen. You want to jump in on that? Oh, sorry. You had your.
No, I was just gonna add another really good thing that I like to reward junglers for is intentionally using information that that you're giving to them, but they don't know that you know. So like if you know that they placed this ward, but they didn't see that that they placed this ward, and then you do something like that to give away your placement and work around it. I always love those types of plays.
That stuff is cool. And then the second thing I wanted to touch on, then you guys can get it and whatever, was the Kai'Sa pick, right? I was just really surprised that Damwon didn't actually, if they weren't willing to take it away, drop a ban, just start banning it out. Gala is just such a freak on this champion. He is so good. At a certain point, I don't actually care what the tournament meta is. I don't really care what objectively the most powerful champion is. At a certain point, I only care that Gala is just a different beast on Kai'Sa and was so good on it all tournament long. It's almost the only thing he played. He had probably 14, 15 games by the end of the tournament, if not 16. So I really was kind of disappointed that Damwon never at least was like, all right, prove it to me. that you got something else, right? Like clearly he did play some other champions and had some good games on them. It's not that I don't think he could, but to your point about like, oh, they just didn't feel like they could maybe match RNG in some of the setups and some of the team fights, and they felt like they had to change up their draft so much. Like, why wouldn't you? They just felt like the most obvious thing. Like, why wouldn't you mix it up with the Kaisa?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know from the outside because sometimes it's players being like, no, I can handle it, or stuff like this. And I think at that point, it kind of comes down to the coach having to be like, no, we have to do the right thing. But who knows? Because I mean, I assume Coma would have the authority to do that. So, it might have just been something they were willing to sacrifice to get other bands in.
Yeah, I mean, both Senna and Varus are super scary, but I also completely relate to the feeling, especially as fans, and with hindsight, you're just like, come on, you just got completely turbo dumped on by this. Like, ban out the thing that just most recently stomped you. It feels like at the very worst, that can't be worse, right? That can't be bad. At least you're taking away something that they successfully used on you. I always, whenever this argument comes up, I always think of the Donkey video, where he
is
is
the best right now.
Yeah, exactly. So he starts out playing one champion, he gets killed, and he's just like, oh, then the next one is the best one. It always reminds me of that. But I definitely know, and we have a lot of series where this type of thing comes up, where the meta of the series becomes really important, and we've seen some series just completely divert from tournament metas like that, where they are focusing on target bans and are focusing on stuff that just completely stump them.
All right. And with that, I think we're going to move on to some Twitter questions here. Mark, I want to read that so badly.
No, dude.
Okay.
Kobe will never get a cat if that gets read out loud.
True. All right. Twitter questions. First one here comes from Captain Flowers. What is your favorite pizza toppings? Well, let me tell you, I do like pizza with a lot of meat. Like I like meat lovers and stuff, but it's got to have some veggies on it too. So like I do actually prefer, if you're going to get meat lovers, I like to like add some green peppers in there, maybe some mushrooms, get some veggies in there. Supreme is also a go-to. Load up the toppings, a little bit of variety, but not pure meat, because then I find it gets too heavy.
My Domino's order is barbecue sauce instead of like the regular thing, chicken and bacon. I think that's pretty bomb. But honestly, I'll eat pretty much anything on the pizza as long as it's something I would actually eat in real life. Like, I will not eat anchovies anywhere. It's like I don't want it on my pizza. I know some people like anchovy pizza. Some people are like, no pineapple, no. I think all that kind of stuff, shut up. It's just, if you don't like the pizza, eat it. Who cares about like what's right on a pizza?
Yeah. I'm acutely aware that it's an attempt to bait us into the pineapple debate.
Yeah.
And whenever that comes up, I'm always like, ha ha ha, ha. Like, yeah, I actually don't really care that much either way. Pineapple's nice, it's sweet, it's fine on it, it's fine not off it, whatever. My favorite topping would be, I always really like pesto. I really like green olives. I hate canned olives. So if a pizza place ever offers olives, I make sure to check, because canned olives, I think, are just the absolute trashiest. But I always have to have some sort of meat on there, because protein is my main focus. We got to keep on building, fellas.
Get them gains. All right. Next one coming here
Pizza
from Genghis Khan. Says, what on earth was going on with Damwon's drafts? Basically, this whole tournament felt like they whipped out a brand new comp every game, which is refreshing, but also seemed like they hadn't settled on one that worked, even at the end.
Oh, that's kind of, I think this is what my feeling was earlier when I was talking about they felt pressured in the tournament, like it was slipping away from them, and they weren't going to be able to find something that was going to be successful for them, and you start to see them probing out and reaching out and having these different styles. I was hoping they'd kind of go more all in on the winning lanes, and try and prop up Canyon style and have him be super aggressive, but they didn't really hold the line.
I didn't hate their drafts. I mean, like in this, best of five, Zoe was permaban the whole time to try and like make control mage a little bit safer for Cryan. That's when they bust out the Xerath, which just generally beats control mages. Like I felt like they used Showmaker's pool pretty well, and I think for the most part, the rest of them they had pretty standard pools. Like it was Aatrox, Lee Sin, Gnar, and Scion for Khan, for example. Like I felt like you can maybe talk about how they got to some of their drafts, but overall, I think I could usually track. I think what I thought they were doing. They were more willing to branch out and incorporate new things with Showmaker, but I think that's just trying to utilize the strength of that player and giving him high agency champions when you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm largely very agreed with kind of like Kobe's take also that it was just like what they were doing before wasn't working, right? And even clearly within the game, some of the things that they tried weren't working. So it was them being forced, at least from my point of view, to try new things, right? I think the Nidalee game was like the most obvious example of that, where it was just like, oh god, nothing is working. All right, harder
Snowball
the game, 2 winning solo lanes. Canyon, you invade on Nidalee. Let's see, right? And it worked. Wasn't enough to get them the whole series though. And next question here comes from at Mokra. I don't know how to say your last name. I'm sorry. David Ratajczak? Not sure. Damwon smashed the LCK and still lost RNG. How big is the gap between China and the rest of the world, considering how much deeper the LPL is in terms of teams? Safe assumption they'll go to Worlds as a region heavily favored to win. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we talked about this a bit earlier, but I think LPL is by far the best league. I thought that even last year at Worlds when Damwon won, because I thought, wow, okay, Damwon, you're like the exception. But I thought that there was like there's a number of teams that I think you could make an argument are comparable to Damwon, and there's only one team in the LCK that's comparable to Damwon, and it's Damwon.
Yeah, I think that's especially true this year with the loss of Nuggery and stuff like that. So, LPL, you're 2021 World Champions. Congratulations! Just rolling the dice to see which one it is.
I mean, yeah, I still want to see the fight, but I definitely agree. I think it's also funny that after Damwon wins Worlds, then LPL is like, we must destroy them. Nuggery, come hither, and they just take a piece of the team that just
taking them down.
Defeated them.
That's how LPL beats them. Yeah. Just blow up the team that won. Samsung White, you're too strong. Imp, come here.
Perfect. That's the NA strategy to finally take down EU. We're just going to keep stealing pieces.
Why hasn't it worked?
Take another one. We need to steal someone from Mad, steal someone from Rogue, steal someone from Fnatic. We'll get there. All right. Anchor question here. This one's coming from Shade Murphy.
Hey guys, this is Shade calling from Omaha, Nebraska. My question is that with the history of North America pulling players from other international teams after these big events coming in the off season, who is most likely from MSI to stand out as a potential grab for any of the North American teams in the next year? Thanks. Love the show. Bye.
Welcome, TSM Carzy.
Welcome, Doggo. It's going to be a tough battle between the LPL teams and NA teams to get Doggo.
I think the thing, like, if my honest opinion is that it's someone from Europe, because I just think that a lot of teams have become more gun shy about importing from Asia because of communication issues that there have been with even some really, really good players who were tougher to work into the team because communication wasn't as good. So that's a big reason why NA is always looking towards the LEC and the best LEC players.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of them, like English, clear English is so big. I mean, we even just had Unicorns of Love attempt to do, bring in the French AD carry and speaking English instead of Russian, which was more natural and easier and quicker. And they're like, man, it just does not work. It's not worth, a slightly better individual to sacrifice your first language for communication, I guess. So, yeah, I definitely agree.
Kaiser and Karzi are contracts end November 15th. Just looked it up in the global contract database. Welcome to NA. Their bot lane, just grip it and throw it somewhere in there, the whole thing together.
Yep, November
EG bot lane,
16th.
boom.
Looking forward to the announcement. Should be an absolute banger. MSI was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it overall, and that should wrap it up for us for now. Thank you, Honda, for making this episode possible, really for making the show possible. We really appreciate it. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Anchor.fm. Please send us your questions on Twitter. Use the hashtag DiveLOL. You can also continue to send us the voice questions on Anchor.fm. Leave us the reviews on the Apple Podcasts Network. And thank you so much for watching the Mid-Season Invitational with us. We will be back next week before LCS starts, Friday, June 4th, with our full summer split preview. See y'all then.